Greetings, fellow investigators, and welcome back to our video podcast, Into the Darkness, where my friends and I play the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. I'm your host, Tom Rayleigh. Our campaign is entitled A Time to Harvest. It was written by Brian Sammons, Charles P. Zaglanis, Glenn Owen Barras, and Mike Mason, and it's available on the Chaosium website. Jeff Wilkins is our game master, and this is Chapter 1, Episode 5. Now, Jeff has warned us, and we are going to warn you, that there may be some rather gruesome details concerning the deaths of children. If you've been following along, you can guess where this may be going. So, if this kind of horror is not your thing, I suggest that you watch something a little more vanilla. Consider yourself warned. Still with us? Good. Looks to me like everybody's ready. Let's continue our journey into the darkness. Jeff?
Thanks, Tim. So I thought I'll mention it to the audience too, just so there's a little bit of a clear understanding. So we don't have Wayne with us tonight. So I'm going to try to go a little bit on some stories and try not to pay too much close attention to timing and stuff like that. But we'll figure it out in game. So, all right. So last episode, I remember we left off. You guys were at the doctor's office.
Dr. Perry. Yeah.
And it was after quite, I don't know maybe a standoff would be a good word for it. You guys met some, creatures of some sort?
The Mole Man War. Yeah, we had the Mole Man War.
So some of you were kind of banged up, bruised up, so you visited the local doctor.
And I had to get rabies shots.
Rabies.
So I'm not happy about that, but...
I think... Tom, do you remember how many hit points did you lose total? 3 or 4?
I lost 3.
3?
Yeah, I am down to 9.
So why don't we say, after the visit to the doctor, you guys, because I think you were the worst. Did anybody, George or, sorry.
I'd better get vaccinated as well.
Okay.
Were you bit? Or do you just get a tetanus shot?
Well, scratched bit. It's about the same, I reckon.
It's probably a combo of tetanus and rabies shots.
I didn't get hurt by anything, but I'm kind of shook up. I wonder if the doctor could give me one of those nerve powders. My mother speaks very highly of them. She takes them all the time.
And he's been telling us about the idea that I guess that Sarah disappeared from her coffin. And there was a calf, was it, that had been placed in the coffin?
Yes.
And then I started blurting out about the stories of Vermont vampires and I think I actually brought up the Mole Man, though he didn't seem to react at all to that.
I thought this was all going to be kind of like summer camp.
I thought these shots were going to be a lot worse than they were, but they were kind of scary. So, Doc, are you married?
No, I'm not actually. Just came up here. I used to live in New York City. Came up here, tried to search of the quiet life.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all from Massachusetts, and us three, we're at least interested in folklore. And every place has its stories. And you were saying that there were a lot of little kids that have gotten killed, more than usual.
Yeah. I don't have any hard numbers for you, so I don't necessarily know.
Well,
no, let me retract that. I think it would be more than usual. I was going to say it was about average, but I think it at least it feels more like. I mean, anytime it happens, it's horrible tragedy, and it just seems like this area has had its fair share.
Well, I hate to call it morbid curiosity, but it's kind of what we're collecting. And Can you tell us any of the details?
Well, I got into a little bit last time. It seems like there are, it's like they seem to have explanations to them, but they're always like accidents, like a farming accident.
Uh-huh.
So it's nothing, at first glance, it seems perfectly explainable. It makes sense. But it's just the fact that it just keeps happening again and again and again, that all these things, all these accidents now are adding up, and it's just enough to make you.
Do they come from a particular area?
No, it's all. Excuse me. It's all around this whole area.
Excuse me, Doctor, but didn't you say that at least some of them had been exsanguinated?
Yeah, that's a whole other mystery. By the way, if you happen to see the reporter, don't mention this to him, please.
You mean don't mention that you talked with us, or don't ask him about these fatalities?
I would say both.
You're talking about Richard Wendell.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's probably always looking for some story, right?
Yeah. I mean, he might know all this. He probably does know all this. He's probably reported on it. But, I mean, if you bring it up to him and he's just going to go, well, how did you find out? And then I'll have to explain myself, and I just don't want anything to do with that guy.
You mean he's never reported on it before?
No, that's what I mean. I think he has. It's probably come up in his newspaper, if you want to call it that.
They must have newspaper records in the library.
Yeah, but they might just be saying something like, little Johnny Dumpling was killed and in a farm accident, and they won't say anything about him being, what was that word you used?
Yes, thanks, you got distracted there. That's right, Doctor. How would something like that happen in an accident? I mean, I understand farm equipment can be quite dangerous. I grew up in Cairo, Illinois. I've been around some farmlands, but complete exsanguination, that seems dramatic.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe not complete. Maybe that's not the right word. Maybe I was caught up and exaggerated a little bit. All right. You can see he's hesitating and hemming.
You mean even if I rolled psychology, it was so blatant that there's nothing further I could discern? He's that unseated?
Yes. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Doctor, I'm sorry to butt in, Doctor, but I was just wondering if there's some sort of common denominator between the people who've had all these accidents. I mean, is there something they all had in common? Some maybe membership of something, or they went to the same church, or they were part of the same Christmas fund, or?
I mean, that's a good question, but nothing comes to mind in that sense. Although, the reason I'm hesitating is because, for instance, this is a small town, so there's only one church. So pretty much, if they went to church, they went to that church. So that there's that connection. I guess the only connection, like what you're asking, is they seem to be young, and it seems to be in this area.
When you say area, what about the next town?
Yeah, not so much. It's mainly just and again, when I say area and this town of Cobb's Corner, you have the town proper that you guys are in right now, but it's outlying farms too. So we're talking 10
fairly large.
Yeah. I appreciate the fact that you're a very busy man, Doctor, but I wonder, Is there a records office or somewhere? Because I'm just wondering if it's a geographical cluster of these accidents. I mean, if there was a pattern to it, then maybe if we looked at a map and saw where all of the different accidents were, maybe if there were more accidents in one area than another, that might tell us something. Maybe.
Yeah.
I look around almost pleadingly to the others.
Well, it seems to me, I guess, Doc, I'm trying to explain us. We're, like I say, we're folklore students. We don't really have any intention of asking any of these people directly about the death of their child. That would be like awful. But you know, we think in terms of wild and crazy stories, and so I hate to ask it this way, but if you have like any gruesome details other than the ones you're telling us, we're not going to like go running to the reporter and say anything. It's none of his goddamn business. It's just stories we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, this is our coursework. This isn't something that we're going to sensationalize.
But you've probably seen the weirdest and the strangest. I mean, the extra anguin, whatever he said. The fact they didn't have any blood. That's.
Are you sure that's what that word means? I thought it meant throwing something out of a window.
It sounds like that wine word. Sangria.
Isn't that the French for monkey? Songe.
Monkey ball.
Le songe est dans l'arbre. The monkey is in the tree.
I didn't know you were minoring in linguistics, Jasper. That's delightful. So yes, Doctor, as we were saying, we're not detectives. We're not,
and we're not going
to solve a mystery, or even if this is an uncanny mystery, we're not here to solve it. We're here to learn what people say about it. How do people interpret these things? I mean, you said it seems to you that there's a greater than normal number of deaths, particularly children. What kinds of stories do people tell about this?
Can you give us an example?
I have to come back to something, but anyway. All right. He's thinking, and he's trying to choose his words carefully. He says, I'll tell you the one tragic story where there was a kid about, I don't know, 16, 15. He was running on the farm, and he ran into the barn, tripped over what was probably a rake laying on the ground, and he just fell, and he fell into one of those thrashers.
Like a combine?
Like a combine with the needles.
Yeah. Oh.
I mean, it was horrible. I mean, now, here's the thing, and he's really struggling with this. He says, here's the thing. So this isn't the type of town, and this isn't, something like that. It's not normal to do an autopsy. It was a tragedy. It was an accident. There's no sign or evidence of foul play. It was just, but when I saw the body, I noticed that he looked thin and gaunt. And that's when I looked into the fact of the blood. Obviously there was blood on the scene. But when I tested the blood, it came up as pig's blood. So that's what makes I'm really on edge about this entire thing, that maybe there is. Maybe we should start doing autopsies on these accidents.
Well, I imagine when they have a little boy or a little girl that's been in an accident, they don't need you. But if there's
Did anyone see him fall in?
No, I mean the parents were home. They were, busy. They were just doing it. And I mean, he's a teenager. It's not like we're not talking like a 3-year-old who has to be watched constantly.
I don't suppose they raise pigs on this farm.
Yeah, I'll say they do. I'll say pigs. Pigs are probably common in Vermont, I guess. I don't know.
You said that there are lots of stories locally about these accidental deaths. How long have these stories been going on? How far back do they go?
Yes. I should know that, but I don't have that information handy.
Well,
that would be even weirder though if I asked the doctor that and he just goes, yes. Okay.
I read in
back away
Mrs. Melange's textbook that she gave us that the stories of the Vermont, I think the Julette, Vermont vampire stories go back to like 1840. That's almost 100 years ago.
Well, I'm just wondering.
It was just consumption.
Yeah, well, I was just wondering whether these might be. There could be settlers' tales. So if there were tales told about some spate of deaths, say 100, 150 years ago, and these legends keep getting repeated, then any accidents would just be added to the death toll, and over a long enough period of time, anything like that's going to be huge, isn't it? It's going to be a vast list. So it could be that, or I mean, let's not forget as well that with any North American legend, we've always got to be careful because there's always our old friends, the liars clubs, to contend with. So we never know whether we're really getting the truth or not.
Well,
I don't think we have to be concerned that the doctor is exaggerating. After all, doctor.
Oh no, I mean it's not that he might be exaggerating, but he's just repeating the stories that he's heard, and we have no idea how many times these stories have been recycled.
Sure. But doctor, you said you knew yourself for a fact about the pig's blood, right?
Yes.
I think too that whether the story's true or not, for folklore, it's a matter of whether it survives the ages or not.
You said you didn't want us to talk to that reporter. Is that because people around here are sensitive to these stories? Do most people believe that there's more to these accidents than what appears?
So first of all, you have to remember too, this is a small town, small community. When one of these tragedies happens, it affects the entire town.
Sure.
So in that sense of sensitivity, that's basically why I don't want the reporter to get a hold of this. And more specifically, I've never told anyone except you guys about the pig's blood. So if the reporter gets a hold of that, he's going to just run crazy with that.
Well, we'll keep that under wraps.
But why didn't you, doctor?
Why didn't?
Well, we're grateful that you would share it with us, but I wonder why not bring that to someone else's attention? After all, people must be greatly distressed, as you say, every time something like this happens. It seems to me that you do sincerely believe something unusual is occurring here.
Well, he
Yeah.
probably doesn't want to act if he doesn't know for sure that something's going on. It's a small town.
Yeah, it's you can see him kind of tense up a little bit, because you basically caught him, and now he's not sure how to react to that. So he's a little bit, you know, it's questioning now. Like he's questioning himself. He's wondering, you know, I should have gone right to the sheriff. I should have done that, you know, but I didn't. I don't know why.
Do you think the sheriff wouldn't have taken you seriously?
It's just that if everyone around you is saying it was an accident, and there's no other signs to say that it isn't an accident, and then I just happen to do a random test because something's just not quite right in my eyes, and I find something that suggests maybe it wasn't an accident, like, I don't know if that's enough to report. Like, it's just another...
I understand, Doctor. It is our work to collect strange tales and the unbelievable. You'd be amazed what people are willing to tell us that they wouldn't maybe sometimes even tell their families.
Can I ask what's the general feeling towards this Richard Wendell, the reporter? Do they like him? Do they not like him?
It really depends who you talk to. Like, I mean, he's in business, so people are buying that trash.
Does he have any competitors?
No. I mean, small town. He's the only one who bought money and bought himself a printing press. Therefore, he's now the newspaper, you know.
I'm just thinking that, you know, if you say something, yeah, I get it. I totally get it, Doc. You say something like that and people don't like to face what their fears are. They might just drive you out of town, you know, spreading lies, they might say. I have a funny feeling that reporter fella, all he has to do is print one thing in that newspaper that the people don't like, and he's screwed. You know, because
doesn't sound like the people like him very much anyway, from what we've heard so far.
Yeah,
doesn't seem to have many fans. Sounds like a bit of a heel.
He's a sensationalist, you know.
Yeah.
Like, as long as you've never gotten in his target, as long as he's never spread some sort of wild tale or sordid rumor about you, then people seem to be fine.
So, how often does he spread sordid rumors and wild tales?
Yes, a lot.
Yeah. What's your library like? Is it a decent library? I mean, I know it's not a city library. It's not like Miskatonic Library, but do you guys have newspapers and periodicals and stuff there? History of the town?
Yeah. I mean, it's not, like you said, it's just it's basically a house that was turned into a library.
You can pack a lot of books into a house.
Yeah.
I think that we've probably taken up a lot of your time. I don't see any other patients though.
No, like I said, I was hoping to kind of the quiet life and semi-retire, so it's not like a very busy doctor's practice here.
Do you like it here on the whole? I mean, aside from the occasional accident?
Yeah, that's what I think. I've been here, I want to say about 12 years now. I mean, this whole, I don't know, you know, late at night, your mind starts to run away from you. I've got these stories about the vampires. I've got people coming up with blood that isn't theirs. It's.
Well, yeah.
Have you ever heard anyone else talk about things like that, Doctor?
Yeah.
I've heard all kinds of stories. Like, it seems like anyone you talk to around here has got a story of some sort. So I've heard the talk of vampires before. That's basically what put the thought in my head. I mean, just the other day, I think the reporter guy ran an article about a bat boy.
Yeah, we heard about that.
I mean,
and we recently talked to Miss Bellwether, and she talked about little demons living out in the woods, but they're not demons at all. They're just mole men.
Mole men.
Yeah, little animals that run like raccoons.
Just.
Yeah. How do you get many animal injuries like these?
These, as in what you guys just came in?
Yeah.
We did tell them it was raccoons.
Well,
yeah,
I think it was. Well, it was a mighty big raccoon, if that's what it was. I know raccoons, and well,
I'm just going to sit there staring in disbelief at the other two.
I'm going to look at Jerry, and
I just can't believe that I'm the only one who seems to have actually taken on board how earth-shatteringly bizarre it was to encounter these things, and everyone else seems to be talking about them like they're just like normal things they've seen. If anything, this is making me feel even worse.
Okay, I just look at
Jerry. I'm feeling even more disjointed and isolated now.
I stare at Jerry and I go, "They were raccoons." With my eyes.
Well, whatever they were, Doctor. Do you have to treat many injuries like this? And of course, by the way, Jeff, I am watching the doctor to see how he reacts to this manufactured debate about the identity of the varmint in question, in case I notice anything in his demeanor.
I don't know, maybe I shouldn't make you roll for this, but I'm just curious. Do an idea roll.
Is that just an intelligence check? Or?
Yeah, intelligence. Knowledge.
For Jerry.
I guess it says idea right on the sheet, yeah.
Yeah. Just Jerry for right now.
Okay.
Negative.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, I did have to elbow him and say, raccoons.
All right, Tug, go ahead. Roll an intelligence roll.
People are not going to believe these damn stories of ours. I got a 50. My intelligence is 45.
Yeah, I was similarly close.
Yeah, well, I know what I saw.
He looks at you. What did you see?
Yeah, well, what I saw was it didn't have any fur for a start.
Oh, I thought they were covered in fur.
I thought they were naked, weren't they?
Naked mole.
I thought they were like naked mole rats. Did they have fur or not?
These are how folklore gets started. You both experienced the same thing, and now you got.
No, I mean they were what? They could have been any. I mean, look. I know there's a point where skepticism can make it seem like you're just being a bit of a jerk. But look, it could be that someone locally has been raising koi pew for the fur nutria, right? So there could be like a koi pew fur farm locally, and some of them have escaped from there. Now, why have they got no fur? They might have either escaped after they've been skinned, which is why they're running around being all crazy and like attacking people, or they might just have mange.
Doc, can people?
Do you know, Doc, if there are any fur farms around here? Because
can people get mange? Do I need another shot of something? I don't want to get mange.
Yeah, he's pretty much had the needle out the entire time, and it's just kind of like talking like with the needle. And if you want another shot, it's right here. I can give it.
Yeah, I think we should wind things up here because I want to go and get my prescription for these nerve powders.
Jasper, I think you're you seem a little unsettled.
Well,
I don't think you would.
I'm 19 years old. I've lived in America my entire life, but for some reason, I don't seem to know whether a drugstore and a pharmacist are the same thing.
I'd almost think you were the one that had a nasty bite.
Is the pharmacist in the drugstore? Is that what it's called? A drugstore?
In this town, it's probably the same thing.
An apothecary?
Is that what you call it over there? I know, as if spelling socks in a weird way wasn't bad enough.
I don't know. It's a good question. We'd have a drugstore, right? Or
so does that sell drugs?
Yeah. All drugs.
So it's like a pharmacy.
Aspirin's a drug. I don't know what they called it back in the 1920s, but yeah, probably any of those names. We know what you're talking about.
Back in the 1920s, they probably called it the drugstore. Like that.
They might have called it
the drugstore. I can't make my voice go up that high. Are you going to take me to the drugstore and buy me a malted milk? See, that's me trying to sound like a woman. I can't do it. My voice literally does not go any higher.
We've got a general store. But that probably
it might have like a pharmacy. Well, usually what you have in tiny little towns like that is you'd have a pharmacist and it would just be literally like a room of someone's house.
Right.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is probably just such a small
maybe
town.
Even next door.
Probably the doctor himself.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
maybe.
I live in a tiny village, and that's what happens here. Is that our doctor also dispenses.
Okay. I don't know if there's a legal issue.
It's not important to talk about it.
In 1930?
I want to get my
No.
medicine.
The farther away you are from the big city, the less the legal matters.
Like, would you really have to write a prescription if you're the one that's going to hand it out anyway?
You just give me whatever you needed.
Yeah. You know what, Jasper? Let me. Does Jasper drink?
Does mommy and daddy let you drink?
Look, believe me, I had a glass of bourbon once. Believe me.
Only because I mentioned that because in the previous episodes there was a little connection that I had going between Jack Parson and Joe Harlow, the driver. There was a little bit of moonshine business going on.
Oh, yeah.
I was wondering if any.
Okay, well, Jasper would love to buy moonshine or illicit booze.
Okay.
He would love to go to speakeasies and do all of those things. He's not entirely sure that he actually has the courage to actually knock on the door of the speakeasy and go inside. But he'd really like to.
That's what we're here for, Jasper. To put our arms around your shoulder.
He did drink some bourbon.
To walk you inside.
Very hot.
How did we get on?
My ears go red.
Is the doc asking us for coffee?
I was just getting ready to offer you a cup of coffee.
Let's go to the library. Thank you, Doc.
So I'm going to have some of my nerve powder.
Sure.
Which, given the year, is basically a speedball, isn't it? It's basically going to be heroin and cocaine. So
mix it into your milk and drink it like a chocolate milk,
like a little tincture.
The doctor was like, "Here's one for you and one for me."
Start the day the Aleister Crowley way.
Where on the map is the doctor, by the way?
Yes, there's actually. It's a good question.
I don't see it on the list.
I'll come back to it later if you don't.
Okay. So we're gonna. Should we head over to down Modeling Lane to the library?
Now I will remind you, you were there already, right?
Did we already go there?
But this time we need to see if they have newspaper archives.
If they don't, I bet the reporter does.
Well, he should be our next destination then, if they don't. But if they do, I'd rather know what he wrote before we have to ask him about it.
Now, let's not tell him anything about what we heard today, but we can ask him about unusual stories that have come up in the town, like the bat person, and see if there's, I don't believe the bat person. It's a ridiculous idea. Little bat people floating around in the woods, nonsense.
We should ask him about the puckwudgies. That's a Vermont
Well,
thing.
if there are unusual rodents in these parts, how do we know there aren't other more peculiar creatures?
And he might have written newspapers, but I bet you he's got some stories. And I think that we could abbreviate that and call them ROUSs, because they were rather unusual size. Rodents of unusual size. Rodents of unusual size.
Well, Tug, you're full of surprises. Next, you'll be developing your own folkloristic vocabulary, and after that, you can develop your own ethnographic terminology. You'll be quite the scholar before this is over.
I think I fully intend on being the one to cross the breach between mole mankind and humankind and be their liaison to the world.
I think they.
I hope they like hamburgers.
I think they already crossed that.
Work on your groundbreaking essay about it.
Tug, I think they already crossed the breach between the tree and your shoulder with knife in hand.
I think the breach might have been damaged permanently by your killing one of them or two of them.
Well, I'll tell you what else is going to be damaged permanently, our credibility, unless we can get hold of either one of them or one of their carcasses and keep hold of it until we can get it back to the university. Can you believe that Blaine was more interested in sending us to collect vampire tales than collecting one of these things back to Miskatonic?
I don't know. I think that we need to make friends with them.
Well, maybe they'll be able to see how forgiving you are.
Think of all of the things they can tell us.
At the mention of the thing holding a knife, Jasper
you,
goes strangely quiet.
Did you hear them? Well, they didn't speak. And when everyone went unconscious, I don't remember anyone reporting any more strange dreams.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But
using simple tools is one thing. Teaching us, that's something else.
I still want to know their culture.
Well, of course, we all want to know their culture. Well, at least the three of us do. And I assume Jasper will as soon as he gets his nerves or his nerve powder underway.
Jasper is going to help me because he studies anthropology, and we're going to get food. When we get dinner tonight, I'm going to get extra food, and we're going to take it and we're going to give it to the mole men, and hopefully they'll not remember that we're their murderers.
Well, I guess I'd better bring an extra helping along myself then.
No, you can stay.
Stay where, Tug? In the restaurant?
You are the monster that murdered them. They're not going to want you around.
You do realize that they would gladly have killed us all.
Yeah. And if somebody stole your brother or sister and ran off with them, you'd gladly kill them too. We were the violated. We violated them.
If they've been living in these woods for
and
however
walking
long
down the street.
they've been living in these woods, they must know that this is a inhabited village full of reasoning people.
Maybe.
Why would they just leap out of a tree and start knifing you?
Maybe people know not to go into that area by folklore.
Well, those would be stories worth collecting.
Well, let's see if we can collect some of them.
You know what, fellas?
We're almost there.
Yeah, we should start asking people about the woods.
Since I saw that thing in the when that thing came out of the bag and it ran off and it looked at me, and I tell you, there's if those things are real, what else is real? I mean, there's stories about like flying snakes, and there's stories about the snake people and giant salamanders in California and the Sasquatch. I mean, are they all real as well?
Well, if they are all real, they're all hiding, and they're probably hiding for the reason that if it's real,
There's
it can
no
be
such thing.
shot.
I don't know. These are all stories. I would think, Jasper, as an anthropologist, we've discovered a primitive tribe of creatures. Like you said, they bury their dead.
I'm
Or haul it away to
well,
eat
I mean,
it.
yeah, I mean, I can see why it's exciting, but I mean, they're not.
Oh,
I mean, where are they in the fossil record? What even were they?
do we know a lot about the fossil record at this point?
God, you know, I'd rather just let's just get. I think we should just get on with the coursework and stop even just.
Yeah, we're
Maybe
here
just stop even talking about those things, because I'm not sure I want to really think about those
Here's
a lot.
When we get to the library, why don't you look through the papers, Jasper? That'll help settle your nerves.
No, we already went to the library. We're going to the Cobb's Corner Gazette.
You don't want to see if they have any newspaper records before we go?
I said they probably have all copies of all of the newspapers at the Gazette because they produce the Gazette.
Well, do you want the Gazette to know that we had to go there and ask to look through all the newspapers? Isn't it better to have a few questions in mind before we go?
Well, we do. They have weird stories. The doctor said he tells weird stories. Let's find out some of these weird stories. And we can find out probably from the obituaries about these kids that have been killed. When they were killed,
either way,
what families they belong to. See if there's, Jasper, you were saying a correlation between the various things. Outside of the game, I'm not going to the library because Jeff said we already went to the library.
Okay, so
all right. Well, I'll just
out of character. We didn't ask for newspaper records.
I'll just keep my "lady don't fall backwards" joke to myself.
So you had that in your knapsack.
All right. Okay. Well, if we've stepped out of character, then Jeff, would it be more expedient
linked to a bloody graphic as well?
Would it be more expedient to get the records from the library or from the newspaper? Obviously, we can't look through records and talk to people at the same time. That sounds confusing, but if you want to save us the trouble of going to the library to be told they don't have them, I guess that cuts out some wasted time.
Yeah, I'll just say, let's do it this way. There are some in the library. Maybe you saw them sitting in the corner.
All right.
They were just like kind of piled and stacked. But I think you're right in that they're probably in both places.
Yeah.
So you pretty much, if you want to go back to the library, I'm not going to stop you. But if you only are going, if you're looking specifically for back issues, both places would have it.
Well, Tug, I'm sure I saw a pile in the library. It didn't look very organized, though. If you're
there's three of us. We can sit and chat with Wendell and look through the newspapers.
That sounds like a fine idea. Jasper, do you think having something requiring a little more settled concentration might calm your nerves?
I feel pretty calm now after I've taken nerve powder.
Well, that's excellent. You do sound like you're just in the right disposition.
I'm feeling
reading through old accounts of.
Yes, I think we should read the letters to the editor as well. I mean that might prove edifying.
Yeah,
that's an excellent idea.
Yes, this room's a very nice color, isn't it?
Well, yes.
As you say that, you look up, and coming down the street towards you, you see the Gazette. It's just up in front of you. But coming down the road towards you is a police car.
Ah.
Those lights are pretty, aren't they?
Jasper, did you say room? We're outside. And that looks like the sheriff. So
That's the side of a barn, Jasper.
Is this outside? I thought this was just a really big room with a blue ceiling.
Oh, boy.
And the police car slows down when he sees you, and you look inside, and it's actually not the sheriff, it's the deputy.
Oh, hey, Dep.
And he kind of like waves hi, and he kind of like waves you over to come talk to him.
And I say that's
afternoon, deputy.
that's Deputy Cutter.
Yes, correct.
I don't have his first name. What was his first name?
I think it's John.
John Cutter. Yeah, I say Jasper. I say, oh, that's Deputy John Cutter. He's cool. He's a young guy, like our age, young.
Good afternoon, John.
Did you just say he's cool?
Yeah.
Do you listen to jazz?
No. Yes, it's a word that I made up. Cool.
Using like jazz talk.
Well, only if you snap.
Wow, that's pretty dangerous stuff. Wow. I'm kind of in awe now.
Tug, your cultural horizons are as vast as your nautical skills. It seems you really have found the right field.
Jerry, I don't know what Jasper took, but he's the one who introduced me to jazz. So he's acting like he doesn't know.
Gentlemen, how are you today?
Well, we're fine. John, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. Listen, I was wondering if I could ask you to do me a favor.
Of course.
Sure.
What can we do for you?
I don't know if you've heard or not, but there's a missing girl.
Well, we did hear.
Yeah.
I was hoping if you guys are out and about,
Yes, it's a tragedy.
Keep your eyes open and let me know if you see or hear anything.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, of course. We'll as soon as we hear something, should we? Can you tell us where we can find the station, or will you want to stop by? Actually, John, why don't you meet us for dinner? We'll tell you if we've heard anything.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Well, if we find the girl, we'll take her to the police station.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, of course, Tug. If we actually find her, then we won't wait till dinner.
Is this Emily?
That's correct, Emily Braithwaite.
Emily Braithwaite.
And what can you tell us, Deputy? What have you heard? What should we be listening for?
I'll just repeat it briefly, but he will give you the same story in that she's a young girl, probably like 17, 18, and she's like touched in the head, so she's not quite
right.
She's kind of has the mind of a 3-year-old or 6-year-old kind of thing. And she's wandered off before, so that's why there wasn't a lot of concern. She always turns up.
I'm sure if there's a place that she likes to go that they've already looked there.
Yes, and that's what the deputy is asking you for help in looking in that. It's now been 2 or 3 days, so now, it's starting to, it wasn't, she just didn't wander off. Usually she comes back for dinner when she gets hungry.
Right.
But now it's been 2 or 3 days, and people are actually starting to get concerned now.
Well, we'll do what we can. We're walking around the town. But we'll make sure we tell the geology kids when they get back tonight so that...
Yeah, I mean, she could be in the woods. She could have wandered through town. It's really... I would think if she came through town, people would have seen her. I mean, people are aware and keeping an eye out. But you never know. She just could be slipping from one backyard to another and just avoiding detection. But if you guys wouldn't mind just keeping an eye out for her, I'd appreciate it.
Of course, we'll do anything we can to help.
I suddenly look over at the guys with just sort of a look on my face like...
John, I'm just curious. Do you, is there anything also that you might like us to ask about as we're making our rounds? Of course, you recall we're collecting folklore, but given the kind of stories people tell hereabouts, we almost get mistaken for amateur detectives some of the time. But of course, people are usually happy to share unusual things that maybe they wouldn't be comfortable to tell the authorities or, their neighbors, people they see all the time. Can we help you by asking about anything in particular? Maybe something more speculative?
He raises an eyebrow at Tug, and he raises an eyebrow at Jerry. So, Jerry, he responds to you first. He says, no, he's got a little bit of confusion on his face. He's kind of looking at you like, no, I don't think there's anything criminal going on. I think it's just, she just wandered off. I mean, if you hear anything, have you heard anything? Should I know something?
Nothing that would be criminal in nature.
We got attacked by animals in the woods. And I sort of go like this so you can see where the bandage is all around his neck. And I show him scratches on my arm. Could she be wandering out in the woods and get attacked by animals?
Where did this happen?
Over, not too far from where we're staying. We went for a walk in the woods and something.
Yeah, I don't think she's that far away from your house. So that's possible.
Oh, no.
Well,
what attacked you?
Some large varmints.
Badgers.
Jasper thought it looked like a badger. Tug thought it looked like a raccoon. I've spent a
might have been a coyote.
I've spent a fair time in the woods and wilds, and I can't honestly tell you I've ever seen anything quite like what I saw. But I'm not from these parts. And maybe it seemed rather like a large mole to me, but I didn't get a good look at it. It all happened kind of quickly.
What if they got to her?
Well,
no, don't even. No, I don't know.
Well, surely anyone, who's of limited wits, wandering by herself in the wild is at grave risk. Detective, maybe, deputy, maybe if you have other, do you have a search party already organized?
I mean, the sheriff and I are out looking right now. Plus, we're just trying to get the word out to them.
I mean, others beyond yourselves.
Yes. I mean, nothing formal.
Well, when you do, maybe you want to take a close look at those woods in the area that Jerry would describe as precisely as he could, even though
Guys, I think
George
we should
can't.
tell him. I think we should tell him, even though it sounds like a crazy story.
Well, if you think she's in trouble...
Well, go on, Tug.
The first morning that we were here, there were little footprints all over our camp, or near the house. And I put out food for them, and the next morning, there were more of them, and they brought me back my socks. And we followed them into the woods, the footprints, and they were like mole men, and they jumped out of the trees and they attacked me. That's how I got this and the scratches. And we grabbed one of them and we brought him back to the house, and then they attacked the house and we let the mole man go, and they all went back into the woods, and that was the last we saw them. But we might have made them mad, and if she walked out into the woods, they might have attacked her. They stabbed me with a knife. What's he look like? Does he look like whole? Have you guys been drinking?
He's listening to you, but he's looking intently back and forth between Jasper and Jerry. I'm curious, what are your expressions on your faces right now?
I'm really concerned that Tug has told the policeman this story. Even more than that, I'm deeply upset that he's just decided to go over the events of the night before, because I'm really not up for him doing that.
I suppose Jerry's expression would be a mixture of resignation and resolve.
Are either of you...
More than anything, I'm just trying to pretend that I'm clear-headed
right.
at the moment. Even though this is a medication from the doctor, so it's not like I'm taking drugs.
Right.
I mean, it's just...
That stuff is all legal anyway.
Stuff from the doctor that's made me a bit lightheaded, that's all there is. I mean, it's fine.
This is all your internal... I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm just a little...
Yeah, this is my internal dialogue.
Unless you want to make him roll to be sure it's internal.
Meanwhile, your face is probably just dead blank, like no expression at all. So, Jerry...
Well, I can't really bring myself to speak because at the moment I'm looking at Tug, and Tug's face is slowly morphing into an angry St. Bernard.
Jerry, let me ask a little more specific. Are you doing anything to cast doubt on Tug's story?
Not intentionally.
Okay. Because he's kind of like, he's listening to this, he's listening to Tug, and it's just a wild, crazy story. So he's trying to keep a straight face. He's taking it all in.
I can tell you this. I wouldn't stop I think a natural reaction would be to nod along, sort of subliminally, and I wouldn't be doing anything to stop that from happening. I'm not trying to act like it's not true, but I'm not interrupting.
Okay.
And I'm not adding anything unless he asks me to.
Internally at the moment, I'm just thinking how funny it would be if I had like a horn or a big pair of scissors like Harpo Marx so that I could go honk or cut the policeman's tie off.
Right.
I think these nerve powders may have been a mistake.
I made a decision based on my intelligence, and I rolled an 84. So at this point, I continue my story. I'm they've lived there for 1,000 years, and they speak a twittery little language, and we wanted to be friends with them, but they're nomadic and they live out in the wood. And I just start, because I'm trying desperately to convince him that they're real. Come on, guys, back me up. There's a girl's life at stake.
I think
I can tell, John. I can tell you what I saw. Anything else as to their provenance or length of habitation?
They don't come from Providence.
I think Tug is speculating, but I did see. It looked to me like it was holding some kind of tool. In fact, they can.
Where's the knife?
I was hit with a rock, at least one.
So was I, right in the forehead.
Whatever they are, they can use tools. I know that sounds extraordinary, fabulous even, but of course it's not unusual. It's not unusual for primates to use tools. You know,
I can picture right now that if Wayne were here, whatever character he was playing would just be rolling his eyes and saying, coming up with some sort of rational explanation.
So are we assuming that there's a fourth NPC who isn't doing much talking, but is doing a lot of eye rolling?
Like I'm trying to picture, it's not just you three,
right?
Group, so he's kind of like going from person to person, and
right.
Well, actually, we're probably not just us three, but because there's some of these other kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
they might not have seen it. Well, they would have.
I think everybody.
I just got this
John, we all know
Wayne's
monkeys.
character hanging about and tutting.
John, we all know monkeys can, use sticks, and crows can break things open with, rocks to get to nuts. It's not. It wasn't so shocking at the time, but they seem like they have some kind of cunning. And Tug's right. If there's some sort of critter living in the woods which is territorial and aggressive, which it obviously is because it attacked Tug without provocation, she is probably in more danger than she would be from raccoons.
But they had they had stone knives. I mean, we're not talking just about creatures that can use rudimentary tools like an ape using a stick, or a bear getting honey out of a hole with a twig. They can manufacture weapons. I mean, this is.
Well, you're right, Jasper, but I don't think that's
they
going
might
to be
intelligent.
I don't think that's going to be the deputy's problem, except insofar, John, as if you do encounter them, you probably should assume that they can, they can think and defend themselves, but they can be shot dead because I shot one.
You know, there's something that I think you guys should bear in mind too. Tug's kind of dumb, but you guys probably know very well that in this day and age, they could lock you up in a nut house for the rest of your life for stuff, for saying shit like this. You know, it's a crazy freaking story. And the only reason Tug has said anything is because now he's afraid that some girl's going to get hurt by those things.
So, John, if you think it would be of any use to you, we've already seen them, and like I said, I already shot one. If you want assistance in a search of the area, of course, we'll volunteer.
We don't have the body because
they dragged it off.
Yeah.
I intended to keep the body. Originally, I wanted to keep one as a specimen,
but
take it back to the university.
Their little footprints were everywhere in our camp. Little footprints all over the place.
So, what do you think? Are we of more use helping you search the area, or of more use collecting reports from people?
Yeah, there's a long pause. He's looking at every one of you intently, trying to take this all in. And he says, well, gentlemen, if you're saying these things were dangerous and you've already shot at them, number one, please be careful what you shoot at. Because if Emily's out in the woods and you fire blindly, that would be a tragedy.
Of course.
So please, in fact, I would ask you just don't even consider using weapons like that until we find her. But at the same time, if you're telling me these stories are true of these things attacking you and you're defending yourself, clearly you need to defend yourself. But I think for now, I would not go looking for trouble. I'll tell the sheriff. I don't know if I should tell the sheriff.
He might think you're crazy. You probably think we're crazy.
I will go over today and check it out. And if I see anything strange, I'll follow up on it.
Don't go by yourself. Wait for us. We'll go with you.
Make sure you go during the day as well. Don't go there at night.
Well, the storm's coming today. I don't know if I have time to get over there or not before then, but we will take all this into consideration. And in the meantime, if you all could just keep an eye out, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Oh, we sure will. And be careful.
Yep, you too.
I hope she's okay.
And he drives off, and he's driving the whole time looking at you guys as he's driving.
Oh, he thinks we're bananas.
I don't know. I think you all might be actually making too much of the strangeness of the event. Whether they had a stone knife, whether they can think, dangerous animals are dangerous animals, and everyone in a rural area should understand that.
Let's just do what we were going to do. There's the Gazette. Let's go up to the
All right, so we know what we're here for. Stories of death, dismemberment, exsanguination, mole people, bat people, missing persons, and otherwise unexplained tragedy.
Yeah, I think we can tell.
And letters to the editor.
Yes, well, you start with those, Jasper.
You know, because there may be a completely unconnected incident, and someone reminisces something, and that leads to
All right.
something.
All right, Jasper. How about this? We can take divide the papers records between us. I'm sure Tug will be more inclined to converse with the reporter. I'll chime in if I'm inspired. But Jasper, do you want to start?
Probably not
The
a very
most
big.
recent? Or you want the oldest or the newest?
Ooh,
Well,
I'm going to start
All
with the oldest. I guess
All
they'll
right,
probably be on microfiche.
Well,
All right.
Considering my enthusiasm for the morbid, I'll start with the newest and look for the most gruesome details I can.
Is the door open?
Yeah, let me give you a quick description.
What's your
The Gazette is an office and home of Richard Wendell, the editor/photographer, a sole reporter of the newspaper. The building's 2 stories tall, living quarters being located upstairs, and the office occupying the ground floor. 3 large windows overlook Main Street, and the brass plaque nailed to the front door reads Cobb's Corners Gazette, Richard Wendell, editor-in-chief. You guys are just walking in, right?
Well, where you
Well,
said
if the door is closed, we'll knock.
we'll knock, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Or is it the kind of door that's open? So we could just walk in.
Yeah, you knock. You look in, and you can see Wendell's in there by himself, and he just waves you in.
Okay.
Just looking for real quick details. Office is not well kept. There's notes, pictures, articles all strewn about. Threadbare blue carpet. It's as if there was a brawl taking place. Yellow plastered walls. Disorderly layers of maps, newspaper pages, fully stocked dark room, small printing press. I think that gives you a good idea.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, Mr. Wendell.
Yes. And you are again, sorry, remind me.
We're the college kids from Miskatonic.
We almost had a chance to speak when we arrived, but we were headed to dinner, and I think you also were headed elsewhere. You have a few moments now?
Yeah, sure.
Army boy didn't want to talk, so we're the students that came from the folklore department, so we're kind of interested in weird and interesting stories that are going on or have gone on in this town, and we just wanted to look through your newspapers and ask you if you know what you got. And I look around at the sort of disarray, and I'm thinking, oh shit, well, finding a nice organized filing cabinet full of newspapers is probably not going to be here. Can you tell us, I heard about a bat boy. What's that all about?
Yeah, that was one of my better stories. That sold out like hotcakes.
People like those kind of wild tales.
Yeah, some of them do. I mean, keeps me in business.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is it true? My pa says that like newspapermen like you, that you all keep like folders and files full of all the really, really weird stuff. Is that true?
That's my job.
Oh wow! What's the weirdest stuff you got?
Well, and I'm just going to do the montage, I think, here for a little bit. So he's going to go off and start telling you stories. So, you know, 80s music coming in, montage. So he's going to start telling you story after story after story. You can definitely tell some of these sound completely obscure and made up. Some of them seem perfectly logical. Some of them sound like they were perfectly logical, but have now just been twisted by...
When you say obscure and made up, you mean like doesn't even sound like folklore. It sounds like somebody like mendaciously invented it to sell a newspaper.
Right, exactly.
Hypothetically?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Presumably there are going to be a lot of these that just sound like they're just variants on other local folklore from other areas.
Right.
Yep.
And those ones would be good. I suppose, I mean, I don't know what the other guys are doing, but if he just starts talking like this, Jerry's writing everything down.
Okay, yeah, we all are. And I think that we're now going to start steering him towards stories of children who have been in farming accidents and like, what's the most horrible sort of thing you ever heard of? And
he will continue to tell you similar stories. I don't really have any further details.
Does he mention anybody being exsanguinated? I don't use that word, but does he talk about blood loss and all that?
He does not.
Okay. And if I have any contribution to steering the conversation, once Tug takes it in that direction, if he seems happy to just go off on it, that's great. But if he seems too random or too reticent, I might, even though Jerry is making this up on the spot, suggest that there are some specialties in folklore that concern themselves with accounts of more recent events and tragedies, unusual or uncanny crimes, the gruesome. In other words, he's sort of combining the Gothic sensibility with anticipating true crime, urban legendary. Alas, Jerry Dorn's name must have been lost to history because he's not credited with establishing this field of cultural studies as he should have been. But of course, that might be because he doesn't survive this adventure. I guess we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
Or ends up in a sanitary asylum somewhere.
Well, here's what I will tell you. Maybe it's out of habit with him being a newspaper reporter, but as he's talking, he's got notes all over his desk, and he's got a pen and paper tablet thing, and he's also writing as he's talking. He's writing your names down. He makes sure to get Jasper's name because he doesn't remember meeting Jasper before. Looks like Jasper stepped out.
Jasper showed up. We tell him how Jasper showed up.
Yep.
His mommy.
I guess we're assuming Jasper has he's probably zoned out looking at the crazy jumble of nonsense in the room.
And okay, go on. You're going to tell us something.
Well, I was going to say, excuse me. There's one thing that kind of comes to your attention in that, Jerry, did you say you were looking for the most recent?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jerry, you noticed that, I guess it would have been yesterday's post. There's an article in there about you guys. I think if you remember when you guys arrived, he asked if he could take a picture of you all.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like the big news story for the day. A big picture of you guys all lined up. He's got your names written down. Some of them are misspelled. Some of them are just outright wrong. But throughout the article, it talks about the kids are back in town. And it sensationalizes the fact that the college kids are back. They're here to cause trouble. They're here to stir things up. Who knows what's happened last time? We still haven't solved that mystery. Now it's all going to start all over again. He's warning all of his readers to be careful, be on the lookout, watch out for shenanigans. There's some risque talk about the men and the women sleeping together. All sorts of who knows what's going on up at that old house.
Mr. Wendell, do you mind if I take a copy of this one? I think our professors will be most entertained by your reporting here. And in fact, actually, could I perhaps buy another copy? I would love to send one of these back to my folks in Cairo. They're always wondering, what I get into in my studies, and I think they'd appreciate knowing that we're doing some true field work here.
Dude, this is all wrong. Your article's crazy. My name is spelled T-U-G, not T-U-C-K, not Tuck. Tuck, like Friar Tuck. That's just irresponsible.
I'm not even mentioned in it.
Well, you weren't here
And
yet.
I'm kind of glad.
Speaking of which, you had, I think, just stepped away, but he made a point to ask you your name. Are you giving him your name?
Yeah, Tug
No, I mean Jasper
Thompson.
Yeah, I'm Mr. Price.
And since they've mentioned it,
Pull myself up to my full 5'6".
since my colleagues have drawn your attention to these matters of editing, Mr. Wendell, my name, I do spell it with a J, not a G. That's a minor correction, I know.
Yeah, that's we do the best we can. It's just me here. I don't have a copy editor. I'm the whole shooting kabang here.
And for your information, Mr. Wendell, we are not cohabiting with our female colleagues. They have a separate floor of the house, and I am rather surprised you'd speculate in that direction.
I'm gonna start sniggering and covering my mouth.
So if you are considering
cohabitation,
if you are considering printing a correction, well, I'd be most inclined to buy a few copies of that as well. Maybe more. Of course, I know that my family will understand that it's very easy for errors to be printed when news is current and fresh. So, of course, I'm buying a copy of this original now for my family. But if you would correct the article and perhaps release a more detailed version, which is more accurate now that you've spoken with us at some length, I'll certainly come around again to purchase a more sizable quantity so that I can send them back to my home community and perhaps share them with our departments at the university. Do you think that might be a good idea?
We wouldn't mind cohabitating with the girls, but they're kind of stuck up.
I'd like to cohabitate with Myrna Loy.
I'm cohabitating with
I've seen her in the talking pictures.
Higgins out in
She's great.
Tent. The tent and the little people.
And
have you been having some of these nerve powders as well?
Is there no adult supervision up there?
Well, we're not babies.
Oh no, I didn't mean to suggest that. I just meant
listen, buddy.
Actually,
we're all grown men. We're old enough to go away to war, you know.
Blaine,
but admittedly not quite old enough to buy a drink if it were legal.
Robert Blaine is our leader.
Okay, all right. I think I met him before.
Yes, he's a graduate student in the department.
Okay, I just was trying to. In other words, there's no teachers with you.
No, they sent us out here. Well, I think we told you the other night that we're out here because, the college is kind of working with some chemical company and they want us to serve. See, we're the folklore kids. We came along just because we had the opportunity to come out here to Vermont and ask about folklore. But the real people who came out here are the geology kids, and they're out doing geology shit. And they're they're in the woods. I mean, they're in the over there.
What are they looking for?
I don't know. I think they're just looking for what general the rocks and the stones and if there's anything valuable out in this area. Survey. They send us kids because they don't want to pay actual survey people to come out here.
And what was that name again? Federated Chemical?
Oh, I forget. Yeah, something like that.
I asked one of the geologists what they were doing, but to be honest with you, after like a couple of minutes, I just sort of switched off.
It seems to be in the nature of the physical sciences to utilize students and graduates as well as free labor. But of course, in folklore, it really is every researcher for himself, more or less. Although I think we make a good team so far.
We've
And
already talked to a couple of people. They told us some interesting stories.
So, have you ever heard any stories that you didn't think were that you thought were of personal interest, but you didn't think were fit to print because, well, either because everyone already knew the story, or because it was too tragic, or maybe struck someone too close to home? Of course, we are very interested in what makes the news, but we're just as interested in what doesn't.
Yeah. Hopefully you won't have another big story coming up because that girl's missing.
Oh yeah, that's horrible. I hope she turns up.
I hope so too.
Jeff, was he as blasé as that sounded?
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
And you guys noticed that I suddenly realized what I was about to say, and then I shut up.
Well, as far as like unprinted stories, there's very little. I try to stick to the facts, so I try not to pull punches. Sometimes it gets me in trouble with certain people, but you know, I try to run a tip-top shape.
Well, you know, the stuff we're looking for is like that. You know, I've heard all those stories, you know, Spring Heel Jack and the Pine Barrens demon monsters or whatever. And I think I mentioned like there were like 1850s, there were supposedly vampires out here in the woods. And that's the kind of stuff we're looking for. Like demons living out in the woods or...
Well, have I got a story for you?
Oh,
I'm going to get my notebook out.
And he starts telling you, this happened about 6 months ago. I do everything here by myself. I do all the typesetting. I do the recording. I do the printing.
yeah.
And the photography. I do all the photography too. I was experimenting with different photo emulsions, and I was trying to get something that would help me take better pictures in low light. I was out walking down the street, down Main Street here. It was a full moon, and something caught my eye up in the sky. And I turned and looked, and like I said in the article, I don't know how to describe it other than it kind of looked like a big giant flying bat boy.
A bat boy, yeah. I heard about that.
How did you know it just wasn't a very large bat?
Well,
there are very large bats. And...
This was big. This was like, I don't know, 6 foot maybe.
Wow.
All right, a giant bat then. Which part of it looked like a boy?
Well, humanoid maybe. Maybe boy is just an understatement, but humanoid.
But you didn't get a picture of that, did you?
I did. And that's what I've not published this yet. I'm still kind of holding on to it. I'm trying to get as much running, trying to get as much leg out of this story as I can, see if I could postpone this to sell more issues.
Can we see the picture?
If we promise not to discuss it with anyone or publish anything about it without your consent and, of course, your credit, if desired, could we at least, as Tug asked, could we at least see the picture? It would be, well, it would be exactly, it would be better than anything we expected from what we came for.
I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. I'll show you the picture if you bring me whatever strange news you hear going on in the town.
Sure.
Agreed.
Sounds like a deal.
All right. He ruffles through some papers on his desk, and he opens up a drawer and he pulls out a folder, and he flips it open and he tosses a photo in front of you on the desk.
It's flying past the moon.
Yep.
It's not a great picture, but
That almost looks like it has a tail.
yeah.
That looks as much a dragon as a bat.
There's no such thing as dragons. Don't be silly.
Dragon. And he writes that down in his notes. Now, you understand, I can't let you have this, but...
Of course.
No, but we get
Is this your only copy?
Yeah.
And that's the only picture you got?
Mm-hmm.
Do you keep files like this of other unusual beings and creatures? Have you ever photographed anything else like this?
I've never been lucky enough to get anything near like this, no.
That's crazy.
I still don't know what it was to this day. I mean, what could
Did
be...
it make any sounds?
Have you tried blowing it up?
The more I blow it up, the fuzzier it gets.
What about the sounds? Did you hear anything?
Didn't really hear anything, and that's what was also kind of eerie about it, the fact that it didn't make any sound.
That was obviously a long way away from you, though. You might not have heard anything.
Yeah, it was hard to really tell how far away. I mean...
How fast did it move?
It was pretty quick, yep.
Well, it looks farther away than the buildings.
Now, what about tales of flying monstrosities? I mean, of course, we've heard all the vampire legendary. Tug is well, if not an expert yet, at least quite well versed in them. My specialty has been more Native American legends, but in those legends, I've heard of giants, but not flying giants.
There's no giants.
What else have you heard that would remind you of anything like this, or really anything monstrous?
I mean, there's always the stories of things out in the woods. Some people say they're demons. I don't. I try to stay away from the woods. I just don't. They give me the creeps. So my business is people. You know, I can't sell newspaper articles.
What about monstrous people? Has there ever been any particularly heinous crimes or murders so ghastly that they verge on the uncanny?
No, nothing comes to mind. Although he goes over and he starts rifling through the papers, and he comes to one, and I'm going to show you this. It's a bit long, though. Tom, I don't know if you want to take the time to read this, or...
Sure. Student Death Horror by Richard Wendell. In a terrible tragedy that has shocked Cobb's Corners, the body of Boyd Patterson, a student from Miskatonic University in Arkham, Massachusetts, was found dead in the mountains on Wednesday, the 22nd of August. The fate of two fellow students, Daphne Devine and Jeffrey John, remain unknown. The students visiting Cobb's Corner on a second field trip this summer were last seen the previous weekend. Boyd's body was discovered by Mr. Brett Kramer, a resident of Waltham, Massachusetts, who was on a walking holiday with his wife. Mr. Kramer said, "I was rightly shocked to see the young man lying at the base of the hills, all twisted up like that." Mrs. Kramer was unavailable for comment. During the few days they were in town, both Boyd Patterson and Jeffrey John were seen in the company of Daphne Devine. Mrs. Ann Haggerty, whose husband is the proprietor of Jim's Grill, said that all three were in high spirits when they ate at the diner. Could these high spirits have led to their disaster? Could there have been a falling out between the three? Sheriff Dan Spencer refused all attempts at an interview by this paper, but sources suggest that he believes the cause of death to be foolish tomfoolery upon the part of the students. The sheriff is known to have a low tolerance of city folk and their intemperate natures. He has launched search parties to look for the missing students, Daphne Devine and Jeffrey John, but so far without success. The Cobb's Corner Gazette has approached Mr. and Mrs. Hiram Patterson, but both declined to make a statement. This paper wishes to extend its deepest sympathies to the Patterson family and its sincerest hopes to the Devine and John families, respectively, that their daughter and son will be found safe and sound. Yeah, we already knew that. That gives us a few more details than what we knew, but...
So, Mr. Wendell, is there anything you left out because you couldn't substantiate it?
No, that was pretty much all I could get out of that one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I should say this, but our current leader, Robert Blaine, was supposed to be on that team last year.
Really?
Yeah, but he didn't go. That's right, he didn't go, right?
He didn't go.
He didn't go, and so now he's going on this one. But I didn't know the guy, but one of our guys knew him, and it was sad. I mean, it was, now you've got this girl going missing.
Do you tend to get a lot of disappearances?
I don't know if I would say a lot, but we do have some, yeah.
How about deaths?
How about what?
Deaths. Do you get a lot of people dying?
Yeah, and he will repeat the same sort of stories that the doctor told you. So accidents, unusual, seems like a lot. Matter of fact, I think, give me 1 second. Yeah, he will definitely confirm that. The word he uses is inordinate amount of young people.
Inordinate, okay.
By young, do you mean our age and younger, or children?
He gives the example that he says this was about 11 years ago. The entire class of 1909, now, I mean, today's numbers, that's a lot, but back then, that was comprised of 4 young men and 2 women. They all died by various means not long after leaving school.
Really?
My God. All of them?
Yes.
And they still resided here in Cobb's Corners?
Mm-hmm.
And every single one of them perished. That's...
How did they die? Do you know?
That's what he again, it was all strange, coincident accidents.
That's weird.
Well, did these accidents have anything in common?
Not really. I mean...
Actually...
Did they all know each other? Well, it was a graduating class, so...
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did anyone actually see the accidents happen?
I don't think I have any details on that, but I don't think...
That's crazy.
May I ask, is there a registrar's office for this county?
There's a courthouse, isn't there?
Surprisingly, I believe that's one thing.
Oh, I'd imagine something that would be at the courthouse.
Depending on what you're going to ask, I'll say yes.
Well, I'm just wondering about...
It's a town hall.
Yeah, records of deaths, births and deaths for the area. When recording deaths, even just in county records rather than on death certificates, you would record just a vague outline of the cause of death, like accident or natural causes or murder, or what have you.
Or maybe they're kept at the Baptist church.
I think he'll probably tell you that they're all kept at the library.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Wendell, everyone here must know how unusual it is to have that kind of mortality among a class of young people. What do people say about this?
Yeah, again, they're all over the place. That crazy old lady, that witch lady, she says there's demons out in the woods.
But how are these accidents? But why are the accidents connected with the woods?
It's just, you just asked me what people say. I'm just telling
about
you
the accidents, about the deaths.
Right. I mean, they could be possessed by these demon creatures.
I see.
Did they all die at the same time?
No, nothing like that. But within a year, we'll say within a year, they all passed.
What about? Are there any incidences that anyone has described as something like, oh, I don't know, possession or bewitchment, or that hasn't been associated with unexplained death? Or episodes of madness or insanity?
He kind of like raised an eyebrow when you said bewitchment. You heard of the old woman Bellwether?
Yeah.
Well, you did just call her a witch.
We talked to her.
He says, you did. He said, I wouldn't go messing with her if I were you. A couple of years ago, my boy was over there, threw some rocks at her house, and you know how boys are.
Yeah.
That spring, one of my I'm sorry, I'm reading a different story. I'll just say he's relaying the story to you.
Okay.
Wait, this someone else said that their son was throwing rocks.
Okay. He doesn't have a son.
Yeah.
So.
Right,
okay.
Right.
So he's relaying the story. In the spring, one of my calves was born with 2 heads, and they mewed like cats. I had to put the evil thing down so we could sleep at night. I heard that woman can sour milk and wilt crops with a glance. Most devilish of all, the way I heard it, she was married to a fellow who didn't care much about vows, if you get my meaning. She caught him with another woman, took his manhood away with her magic. Smooth as a baby's bottom he was. Word is he made it to Brattleboro, and then he couldn't take it no more, and he killed himself.
Wow. That's exactly
that's souring milk. That's a really traditional one. That is.
Yeah, that's like
a good one.
1600s, 1500s.
Nice touch, that one.
That's about as old as witchcraft accusations.
So,
Mr. Walden, have you always lived here?
Yes.
And have there always been stories about these strange accidents for as long as you can remember?
As far as I can recall, yes.
I really want to look through these back issues of the newspapers.
Do you care if we look through your newspapers?
Yeah, sure.
How about take up your time?
How about you guys can look through the papers? I'm about ready to make some coffee. You guys want some coffee?
Oh,
yes, that would be delightful as we continue our researches. Thank you so much for all your time. And
remember, we had a deal. If you guys hear anything, you bring it to me.
Well, absolutely. And as I said, I'll be returning to pick up more copies of the revised account of our visit to Cobb's Corners. But before I forget, how much will it be for 3 copies of this?
He kind of looks up and he does the math in his head and he says, make it a nickel.
I give him a nickel.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
That's a month's salary.
And I drink my coffee and start looking for the recent. If they're in no kind of order, maybe try to organize them. But if that's impossible, either way, the goal is to find suitably ghastly or horrendous events.
I guess a question would be does the coffee apply to the newspapers?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we spend maybe an hour or so looking through there, drink our coffee.
Yep.
Where do you guys want to go next?
Well, if we don't find enough in these newspapers, since we had another reason to go back to the library because Jasper wanted those death records, we could look through the newspapers in the library as well. In fact, that's the next thing anyone mentioned, was willing to go there because that's what Jasper wanted to do. But after that, do you all still want to talk to the preacher? I mean, if they're going to keep talking about demons and witches, we might as well hear what a man of the cloth has to say about that.
Oh yeah, I mean he's sure to hear lots of local folklore, isn't he?
Yeah.
In a position like that.
Depending on how late it's getting, I mean, maybe we want to go meet everybody back up over at Jim's Grill. I know we've always got tomorrow. We can keep looking.
Let's give me 1 minute here.
Well, nothing works up an appetite like stories of two-headed calves.
Anything? So I'm going to tell you right now, if you go to the library, you're going to look through the newspapers, you're not going to find anything additional to what I'm telling you now. So other than you are finding the same stories being repeated, so the same sort of unusual accidents, basically just a repetition of what I've gone through.
So there's no significant disparity between what people say and what's printed by this guy in the papers.
Except there's no mention of exsanguination. So
right. Aside from that.
And I don't know if you guys noticed or not, but the story of what happened to your previous schoolmates,
right?
He got the name John Jeffrey wrong.
Jeffrey Johns.
Right.
So again, it's like, he's...
So the details are unreliable, but the basic content is almost replaceable. What about letters to the editor? Jasper was asking about those before.
Yeah, I'm just going to say the same thing. So there's a repetition.
Okay. So was there other stories like my kids threw some rocks and now we have a two-headed cow kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
We just have to take everything this guy says with a grain of salt. I mean, that's folklore. It's
that helps with witches.
Even with the doctor, he could have just been gagging with us, He's sitting there thinking, I got these kids believing my stories. What else?
I'm telling you, fellas, liars clubs. One day I'm gonna write a book about liars clubs.
I want to get some food in me, and I want to. Now I'm not so sure I want to make friends with those guys if they're involved with kidnapping girls. Maybe they've been kidnapping girls for 1,000 years.
How about this? I think if you guys are okay with just going a little bit over, we could probably get the preacher in if you want.
Oh, okay. Well, then we're walking by the church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe we want to say that about them kidnapping girls, but I always think this when I'm reading the stories in the pulps. So why do the Martians want Earth women?
Because they're hot.
Yeah, but why do they need them? What can they do with them?
Perhaps their ancient species has become decadent. It needs new blood from the more primitive earthbound races.
They're not after blood. They're just after some fun.
What, they're going to haul some rope in on a ship?
I am in the wrong group of people. Where is Higgins when you need him?
He's he was called away by two old friends of his, some guy called TC and another guy called Thomas something.
You know what? I'm going to change things up real quick. I think what we're going to do next episode, I'm going to start with the preacher.
Okay.
But for right now, I'm going to jump back to the group in the geology group. All right. So let's see. Are any of you geology? I don't think.
I need a name change then.
I'm Harold Higgins.
Harold Higgins.
I'm not sure what.
I don't remember Lewis's last name.
I know Rod's a football player. I don't know what his discipline is. So.
Yeah.
Weren't you Jason Trent? Sherry? The dark-haired guy, the shy dark-haired guy.
For some reason, that was negated.
You were Lewis Gibbons.
Yeah. Gibbons. All right. Thanks. Wasn't he like an upper-class guy and a pianist?
Yes.
Isn't that what yeah.
Yep.
Music.
Lewis Gibbons.
Yes. Mick, you're Rod, the football player, who is also geology.
Oh, right. Okay.
And Lewis Gibbons was the chemist, right? Yeah, that's why I had like the chemistry kit, and I was testing the samples. And,
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Right. I didn't want to. I set up the kit at the car because originally, yeah.
Right.
But we've all moved into the campsite, right? But that's right. Lewis didn't want to stay there because there was a truck that was supposed to pick them up and take them back. Some people were camping. Some people were going back to the house.
I think everybody went back to the house.
Okay. Right.
Yep. So what I'm going to do, we're going to have it so that it's still. So we're rewinding to earlier in the morning.
Okay.
The whole,
So this is the next day.
No, not the next day. This is still the morning after the big animal mole man attack. Right. So your group went off into the town and did the folklore, and then the geology group went off to the.
Oh, right. But I mean the next. Okay.
We're just rewinding.
Yeah.
While we're doing this, the folklore people were doing that.
Yep.
Right.
So John, or Joe Harlow, he gets in the truck. He takes the group out to the dig site that you had set up the night before or the day before.
Right.
Everybody starts to get busy. The threat of rain is imminent. You're not sure how long you're going to be out here. You may be cutting the day short. Blaine has come with you guys this time.
Right.
So he's kind of overseeing things, just double checking, looking over your shoulders, poking around. After a while, you guys are digging away. You're doing your due diligence. And let me see who gets the best roll. Could you do either, if you have a roll at a plot, well, if you don't have your characters, just roll 100 and see who gets the best.
I got a 66.
60.
20. Oh, hang on. 26. Sorry, I thought it was 29 for a minute. It's 26.
All right. So Rod.
Yay, Rod.
You're digging away, and in the soil, a glint catches your eye, even though it's cloudy and overcast. Something shiny.
Ooh. I'll very, very carefully scrape away around it with my trowel.
Okay.
Might be a deposit of iron pyrites.
And you carefully dig around it, and you get to a point where it doesn't look that big. Looks like about the size of a nickel or a quarter. It's kind of dark in color, but it's shiny.
What sort of shape is it?
Well, I can actually show you sort of what it looks like. Kind of like this. You can see that. It looks like there are lines of green, not glowing, but like a light green quality to it. But you have to catch the light just right to see it. It's not obvious.
In just sort of looking at it, possibly even with an eye loop or something, if I've got one. In trying to get the sort of the best look at it I can. Is it a metal?
It definitely has metal-like qualities. Yes.
Right. But then it seems to have these lines in it. Would you say it's almost like a grain?
Veins.
Yeah.
Or striations.
Yep. That's a good way to put it. It is not like anything you've seen before.
Yeah, this No, that combination of features doesn't make very much sense to me at all. Just looking around the site, are there any, postgrads or people that I could go to ask about this?
I'll say that if you do, or if there is, they know just as much as you do.
That is really odd. Well, I'm assuming that there's a tent and that there's actual sort of surveying equipment. So I'm going to go off to the surveying tent and have a squiz at this through a microscope.
Yeah, sure.
Even wondering if I might be able to file off a tiny. I might even try filing off a little bit of it if I can find a file, and having a look at some of the particles under the microscope as well.
So let's say Lewis is also out of the sun in the tent because he probably doesn't like being drafted into all this digging and dirt, and probably would prefer to be doing something with equipment. So he periodically, goes to check on the equipment or find any excuse not to be doing manual labor. So, did you find something of interest out there?
Well, I'm not really sure. It's take a look at this. It's like this weird. It kind of looks like metal, but then if you look at the way that the indications are that it was formed in a different way. It's not uniform. It's very odd.
Well, I'll take a look. I'd rather be.
I mean, is it magnetic?
Well,
possibly...
I'd rather be running a test on this than digging in the dirt to find more of whatever it is.
Just trying to think what kind of test we could.
Probably I'm not a chemist, Jeff, at all, but maybe he has some equipment that I could run some basic test on. It's like chemical composition. If little pieces, can I maybe
acid test
shave off a little bit? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
See how hard it is.
You must have his chemistry score somewhere, and I rolled well. I rolled a 13.
Let's see if I can give you guys some more information. Hardness. On the Mohs scale of hardness, Mohs, M-O-H-S, it would rate greater than a 10 for its resistance to scratching.
So it's impossible.
So, in other words, what I wanted to do, I couldn't do.
It is harder than diamond.
It's harder than diamond.
And we probably have some kind of diamond tool that we would use to take a piece, and it doesn't work.
What about its reactivity with acids?
Yeah. You found it out there?
Reactivity? Yeah, here we go. Reactivity. It is unaffected by extremes of air, moisture, and acids.
Well, I was about to ask if you thought you could find more, but you won't need to, because this did nothing.
You know the spot you found it, right?
Oh, yes, I've marked the spot where I found it.
Okay.
Although this one seems resistant to all standard tests.
You asked about magnetism, and I'm not seeing anything about that, so I'm going to say no, it's not.
Well, if it was a metal, then it would probably be malleable in some way. But if it's that hard, then it's probably more crystalline than it is, which is also why it's not reacting in any way.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it in the under the microscope, the striations, are they composed of the same material as the rest of it? I mean, are they just cosmetic, or is this, or is this
color? Under color, it says exhibits pleochromism, as it appears to have two colors, those being green and black.
So it basically, depending on how the light's striking it, it gives off two colors, depending on the angle of the light. That's interesting.
For any other science nerds, crystal system is isometric.
Okay, it's a crystal.
6/M bar 4 3/M.
Okay.
I'm going to leave you with one last thing. After a little bit of looking at this thing, inspecting it, running some tests like you've been doing, you suddenly become aware of the fact that your fingers, your hands are like greasy.
It could be poisonous. I mean, there are poisonous elements. Arsenic.
And I think we'll leave it there.
Antimony. Okay.
Lewis is very concerned about poisonous effects on his hands. He didn't get into chemistry in order to put his piano playing at risk by any means.
Good point. That is a good point. And yet he's wielding a hammer and hammering things. That's
he was trying to avoid it and thought, oh, maybe I can avoid more manual labor by running tests on this thing in the tent. But maybe this did not go according to plan.
All right. Our players included Ch1, George Sieg, and myself, with Jeff Wilkins as the keeper of the secrets. Wayne will join us again next week. We're currently producing up to 4 shows a week with music and sound effects added in post-production in order to create a richer listener experience. We provide audio-only versions of our shows free for you to download from Podbean or iTunes. If you'd like to become a patron, visit our Patreon account. Just $1 or $2 a month helps us a lot. You can find a link in the description below. Like, share, and subscribe to our channel and punch that bell icon for updates on our latest shows. And leave us some comments. We enjoy reading them and answering any questions you might have, though we try to keep them spoiler-free. This is Tom Rayleigh, together with all the members of our gaming club, inviting you to journey with us once again into the darkness for another adventure into the universe of H.P. Lovecraft and the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. Until next time, good luck and good gaming.